Good evening on the West Coast. Good evening in the mountain. Good evening in the central. Good evening on the East Coast. You know exactly who it is, family. Angela Nirvana, your hostess with the mostest on the Reparationist perspective, bringing you those Adocs, hot topics, and making the case for reparations, making the case for weaponizing our votes, socializing our suffering, and this evening, family, it is your rendition of As the World of Adocs Turns, your Ida B. Wells 2.0 anti-black racism, and your color gatekeepers of white supremacy. Yes, family, I'm excited to dig into tonight's topic with the one, the only Rosita. Yes, family, she is Adocs, slinging bricks for our Adocs babies in Chicago and all over the country. These Mickey Fickies, these Boule, these immigrants, these white folks are trying to extinct us. They hate Adocs poor. They hate Adocs poor. And Rosita and Brian, when he joins the live, are here to tell you about all of the puckery nationwide with 200,000 missing Black teachers. Yes, family, I didn't stutter. They're going to unpack tonight's topic, tell us all about the designs to extinct, ethnically cleanse Adocs up out of the very country their ancestors built with their lives. Introducing Miss Rosita. Let me unmute her. Oh, let me make her even with me. Hold on, y'all.
Hello.
Hi, Rosita. Thank you so much for joining me in my tribe.
Yes, it's my pleasure.
It is just thrilling to have you here. I don't want to waste I don't even want to waste a minute of this hour we have together. What's up, Brian? I see you, family. They're chatting, and for those of you who have yet to chat, I want to thank you so much for joining the live. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and thank you for your contributions to my voice in the new Black media. So the way to give is scrolling at the bar below. Miss Rosita, could you please share with the family a little bit about yourself before we jump into tonight's topic about how the Boule, the immigrants, and the whites are trying to ethnically cleanse and extinct poor Adocs? I need for them to understand, to overstand who you are and why your voice is invaluable tonight.
Okay. First of all, I am a parent first, 4 children, 3 sons, now a grandparent of 4 grandsons. So this is how I came into the public school system first as a parent while I co-taught. I worked in most of the most disadvantaged communities by choice. I worked in the housing projects, Daniel Hale Williams, when I started on the south side of Chicago, where you hear so much about. I started out there, and I was at the first school that closed in 2001, based up on so-called eugenics and standardized testing. On the day that they came into my school in 2001, I knew instantly what it was all about. It was not about education. It was about gentrification. That was in 2001. And I began to watch the purge of Black educators for the next 10 years. In 2001, our CEO was none other than Arne Duncan. It was his first year, and he began by closing Williams, Dodge, and Terrell. Chicago is ground zero for school reform, and it is something under Duncan that swept the nation, and in every major school district across the country where we have predominantly Black children, we have a purge of African-American children and teachers. It's interesting, I followed the data that there was a drop in African-American teachers of 1.7 to 2.0 annually in Chicago for over 10 years, and the same drop happened with our students as well. So we lost 100,000 African-American children, and we lost 14,000 Black educators. When Mr. Duncan went national, our program was called REN 2010. REN 2010 was closing schools in predominantly Black areas. 100 schools had closed under the current Mayor Daley. And then when Arne Duncan went to be the CEO or the chief education, and I say CEO because in education, in order to have a district, you must have a superintendent's license. Arne Duncan did not have that. He had a bachelor's in sociology. So with a bachelor's in sociology, he became head of the U.S. Department of Education, and he had a bachelor's here. The reason why he could do that was because our mayor changed the category so that a business person could be the CEO instead of an educator. So that's how it all started in 2001.
My goodness. Now, let me back you up. In 2001, you talked about they coming into the schools to gentrify.
Yes.
Um, who is they?
They was the Mayor Daley. The mayor at that point was Mayor Daley, the second Mayor Daley, because we had two Mayor Daleys for a long time here. So the second one, Mayor Daley, was in charge, and what he did was convince our pastors, our legislators, and everyone that the schools that we were in were failing. So the first 100 schools failed due to test scores, but I happened to be at the first school. I have the data. Our school was 40% achievement and growing on standardized testing, because you have to understand, when we say children who are poor, there is to say that they are achieving at 40% of the rate when they live in very violent communities where many times we would dismiss our students and there was nothing but they would leave the building and they would be shooting over their heads. So we had a lot of systemic problems, social emotional issues we were dealing with. We even opened up our school on Saturday and volunteered and put our money together to feed our students, because several of our students, their parents had been murdered as a result of the drug war down in the project. So a lot of time our students wouldn't have food over the weekend. So we opened up on Saturday, and even though the district did not feed them, the teachers put their money together and fed the children so that they would make sure that if they had to miss a meal, they would only miss one day and be hungry, because we could not let them go. This is the kind of environment that we were working in. And there were many times when we were dismissing, we would have to grab our children and duck bullets to get back into the school. So we were working.
Wait,
Yeah.
let me take, wait.
Yeah.
You as a teacher had to dodge bullets just
Yes.
to get to and from school. The children had to dodge bullets just to get to and from school.
Yeah.
Because people are playing down the magnitude of the Chirac that Chicago actually is. We don't see that on CNN.
And this was in 2001. So therefore, when we saw this, and we're 20 years later now. So when we saw this take place, I remember telling all of my friends, if this continues, we're not going to be able to do anything with the children as they grow up, because of the environment that they were living in, the lack of resources, and really the Black educators were really like their parents. They supported them at the school when the parents could not. Anything, and my daughter will tell you, when I went shopping, I had a daughter the same age as my students. I would buy uniforms for all the students in my class. And I did that because it was a uniform policy. And if they came to school without their uniforms, they would be sent home. So I would buy a whole classroom set of uniforms to make sure that when my students left, I would even tell them to put it in the locker and we would come home and wash them and get them ready, because I didn't want the kids to have to suffer because they didn't have uniforms, they didn't have food. There were so many times my daughter, who now works with children as well, she watched as like if she had a blouse, then I said, go get 10 more blouses. And we would make sure that our students were dressed and fed. And we had a school community, and we were achieving. And we had one of the best schools that was ran in the housing project. We were between the Dearborn and the Ickes housing project, two projects. We had one point had over 800 students. So it was a difficult and very rewarding job. In fact, I've had the opportunity through Facebook to watch almost my entire class. They're my Facebook friends, and I get to see them. I was talking to one of them today. This is how close the school community was. And when they came in on that day, I want everybody to understand it was a regular school day. And I looked out and I was just kind of talking to the students. We're getting ready to take the Iowa. Do you know how important they're saying the test scores? We don't want the school to close down. Now, they had never closed a school in the history of the United States. And for some reason, like the older people say, listen to yourself talk, because they were there in 15 minutes after I said that. And I looked out the window and I said, I wonder what's going on. There are 3 prison buses, not paddy wagons, prison buses waiting outside. What is going on? So they began to call us down to the auditorium, and we thought there was a new school, NTA, being built. And those teachers had been housed in our building for 2 years, getting paid 8 hours a day with no students and entire staff, to open up a new school that we didn't know was going to take all of our jobs. So we were in the classroom and we were called down and we protested. Well, my class, they were in the paper because we had just done the Montgomery bus boycott for the Black History display. So we knew what to do. So we came back upstairs, we made our signs, and we began to protest. And so I remember telling the staff, they are going to use these standardized test scores to destroy our whole community. And they did. After they used the test scores, they shut the school down. And since that period of time, 163 schools have closed on the South and West Side since that 2001 event. Williams, Dodge, and Terrell were the first 3 to go down. And then after that, there were 160 more. And people talk about the 50 schools that closed here under Rahm Emanuel due to so-called underutilization. Those schools we had lost 100,000 students as a result of the proliferation of charter schools. And we were losing teachers. So I worked up until 2010. And in 2010, I went to work organized under the Chicago Teachers Union. I was the first organizer under Karen Lewis's, she just passed away, but I was the first organizer hired under the union because the union changed their focus to political and community organizing from service to teachers. And that ended up costing 6,000 more teachers their jobs.
Okay, let's go back. This is too much.
It's a lot.
It's a whole lot because I am so over fighting people in my feed over how we got to the place of Black on Black crime and murder. They literally pulled the foundation out from under poor Adocs students.
Yes.
To render them helpless in the streets to their own peril, to the peril of their own parents. And it's the same propaganda that was spun to justify the not so new slavery in the private prison industrial complex. I want you to talk to me about those Adocs principles that were lock in step with white supremacy to undermine the teachers in Chicago, to cost their jobs, to put in the new whites, the not so new white oppressors called immigration and called the white teachers who don't give a damn about the poor Adocs students in Chicago who can't handle them. And now our children are left to their own devices as folks want to come from my jugular to try to make some comparison between the white inferior glacier donkey race soldiers that annihilate us with immunity as compared to the Black on Black crimes and murders. Could you
Exactly.
please talk about the people
Exactly.
that look just like us, that are us,
Exactly.
who are complicit in
Yes.
being the colored gatekeepers of white supremacy to our own people's peril?
Well, in Chicago, and I found out that this is the case in education almost in every Black school district in the country, we have the Black Greeks who are primarily, predominantly AKAs that
Let me
literally
take a breath.
run. Uh,
AKA is Kamala. You know, the
yeah,
Ski Chucks and Pearls audience.
yeah,
Some of the audience is
mhm,
watching from all over the country. So
yes.
some things I'll slow you down to unpack because they don't know. When you say
Mhm.
Greeks, they don't know what that means. Go
Okay.
ahead, please.
So these are women who went to school and came on, women that we admired and looked up to, like they do Kamala Harris. And they literally became the gatekeepers in Chicago public schools, and in many cases, probably still are. But their job was to pass and to further the mandates of white supremacy by getting rid of Black ADOS teachers. And most of them were not veterans. How they got that done, just like Arnie Duncan, who wasn't an educator, most of the principals were first, second, and third year educators. They were not veterans. When I first started teaching, they recruited me for the program, but I didn't know that they didn't want anyone who didn't know anything to have the position. Just like Arnie Duncan was in his 20s and he didn't know anything, I thought I needed to know a little more about education before I became the principal. I have several friends who were Greeks, who were AKAs, and they are principals today. They took the job after 1 or 2 years. So you have no investment. You have no investment in the teachers or the children, because a lot of these people were just not great teachers. Great teachers like to be with students. So these are people in many cases that did not want to be in the classroom, had an education degree, and then they became the administrators. So their job was to pass the system of white supremacy, the ideals of the system. And because they were in blackface, they could get away with doing this without being charged with racism. So you would have Black principals completely just firing boatloads, entire staffs at their school, and replacing them with young others so that were non-Black. So they could be anything and but Black, and especially Black veterans. So the Black veteran teacher then became, and it was a strategy used by the Daley administration in Chicago, was to go and get young Blacks. With the day that they closed our school, there were about 70 people that bum rushed our building, and they were all young Black people. And they came in and they were laughing at us, and they were telling the children that we were no good and that they were going to get good teachers for them. And the children were so confused because they looked up to us and admired us. And now these people are saying, these people failed you. They're no good. These teachers are no good. So I went to visit my students, and one day in the new school, and I knocked on the door and I saw them. There was a young white male teacher teaching them, but they were throwing things and spitballs and not paying attention. I went in the classroom and I asked them what they were doing, and they said, "Where are our teachers?" And I said, "This is your teacher." And they said, "No, Mrs. Chatanda, it isn't. Where are our real teachers?" And they started naming the teachers by name. Where are our teachers? These people are not our teachers. So I sat with them, calmed them down, and the young white people teacher literally begged me to stay. He just couldn't understand how I was able to get them to sit and do their work. And he said, "How do you do that?" And
Because you are them and they are you is how you do it.
and he just didn't know, and they would not listen to anything he said. So when I saw this go down and some of the other things, I knew we were headed for the calamity that we have in Chicago, with the time of every adult that cared about them, even their parents. The laws had been made, and people say, well, what are their parents doing? But there have been laws made to tie the parents' hands so that they could not properly discipline with the tools that they had. Now, we're not talking about corporal punishment, but that was some of the strategy that blacks used to discipline their children when they would spank them. Well, if you take away that by law and say you can't spank, and these are people that grew up with that kind of discipline, then what are they to do? What strategy do they have to change behavior? You're not giving them another way to do it. So they don't discipline because they're afraid if they say or do something, they'll be arrested, or DCFS will come out and take their children. So I developed strategies to change behavior working with, and it worked like a charm. We use self-monitoring programs to get ultimate goals by positive reinforcement, and building children up through self-monitoring. And that I train parents how to use it to change their children's behavior. But these parents, the young parents are out here, and you have to remember, I am a young grandmother. I do have a son who had children as a teenager. These young people, the grandmothers today are not the grandmothers of yesterday who stepped in and helped to raise those children. I stepped in and helped raise my grandchildren. But a lot of these young women don't have that. They do not have parents that are stable due to the crack epidemic. A lot of their parents were on crack. We, as a group, we have to be that village. And what they have done, they have removed us from the village so that we cannot help our student. We cannot be there. We can't be the buffer for them when things are going wrong in their home like we used to be. And this is why you see the violence. I ask people to think about this as a product of public housing, and having to understand the culture in public housing. And public housing is a community where people get together and they support each other and they share their resources. They help each other. And even though I grew up years ago, it was still a community, a culture. When you take children out of their schools and remove them from the support that they have there, and then take a bulldozer and knock their homes to the ground, which is what happened in Chicago. All public housing was removed. Those same students that I taught, their buildings, after the school closed the next year, their buildings were knocked to the ground. So they were then scattered all over the city. And this is why you see the violence all over. These poor children who had nothing, and it enrages me to think somebody in a position of authority looked at those poor children and they said, we don't like what you have. You don't have enough. So we'll shut your schools down. We will knock your homes down, and we'll scatter you everywhere. So when the young people began to have to move out into the community where they were all scattered around, they had they were moving into some case middle class Black communities that resented them because they didn't have the social skills that they needed in order to merge into that community. What happened? They began to get angry because they knew that they were not wanted in those communities. And they felt, if you can imagine being a child and having all your teachers fired, your home taken from you, just everything stripped from you. In some cases, students at my school that was in the projects that could walk across the street to get to school and be a few steps into the school had to go 20 and 30 blocks to another school because they were not allowed to go to the school that was built for them in their housing complex. So these are things that happen. And I want people to understand why we have the violence here like we have it in Chicago. And it is coming to your town. If you do the same thing that was done in Chicago, you're going to get the same result. You're going to have angry children. You're going to have people who feel, the young people in here feel like there is no hope for them, and they don't care if they die. People say, well, why are they shooting? The other thing they did here, it was very brutal in Chicago for about 25 years under the Daley administration. For instance, a lot of people went to jail due to mass incarceration. During the Daley administration, they would, if a young parent had a car, they would, and had nowhere to park it, they would pile tickets up on the car until they could boot it. And then they would take it and they would put it in a pond. And if the poor person could not get it out, they would crush it. They said they would crush it. So now you have children who grew up in this climate. First of all, their schools are gone. Their housing is gone. Their cars are gone. Their parents are incarcerated. You have children that have learned the viciousness of a city. How vicious can it get when you are willing to do this to children? So children that are poor have gone out and they're angry and they don't know any better. And they don't understand charity because they haven't seen it. They don't understand mercy. They haven't seen it. They haven't seen it in Chicago. And so this is one of the reasons why, and I tell people that those of us who know the system, we have to get back in the system so that we can help, so that we can be that bridge that helps our young people. The young parents don't know. We've lost 2 to 3 generations of young people here in Chicago. And we don't know, most people don't know what to do. But the problem is this: we have to start somewhere and we have to create something different. We cannot, if we continue down this path of what's going on in the schools, what's going on with parents, we have no future. We have no future here. And you're right about the Black elite. I call them the Black elite, the top 10%. They have engaged in this ridiculous behavior of Black on Black hatred, of Black on Black hating the poor, of Black on Black, I've got mine and you get yours. There's absolutely no love in the game. I'm telling you, there is no love in the game when it comes to the Black haves and the Black have-nots. It's almost an emotional war between them. They talk about the children's parents. They talk about their mothers. And I said to them, why aren't you happy that these young people are having children? Middle class people are not having them. And if these children are not born, you can't work and take care of your family because you're not going to go to the schools in other neighborhoods and work because they don't want you there. I have been the only Black teacher at a Hispanic school. I have taught. You are not welcome there, and they don't want you there. I don't know if
how do they treat you?
But in Chicago,
how do they treat you, Miss Rosita?
Oh my God!
In the Hispanic schools, how do these immigrants who come up over our backs and take our jobs, how are they treating you in those settings?
Most of the teachers that I have in my class group, I would say about 75% were terminated by Hispanic principals. I was too. I worked at CPS. I've been almost in every school as a sub when I first started. And 25 started in 1987. Never had a problem. I was at a Hispanic school for 6 weeks and I was terminated. They lied on me. They said that they said they just flat out lied on me. And guess what? The attorneys, the white attorneys at Chicago Public School, they told me they value them and their lives more than they did me. I've never done anything. I don't have a record. All I've ever done is teach, but my word was worth nothing when and I will tell you this story. There was a young Hispanic boy. He would call me in English and Spanish every day. He spoke to the black children and called them names. I've seen it over and over. He was in the classroom one day and he literally, and this, I have evidence of this, I have pictures and everything. He tore my whole classroom up, wrote the N word on the board at the end of the day. And I said, line up or else I'm going to call security. He ran down to the office and pinched himself. We're talking about seventh and eighth graders now, in the face, very small pinch, and ran to the office at the end of the day. And when I got ready to leave, the police were waiting for me. And they wanted to take me to jail. They said that I had pinched him. And fortunately for me, the police officer, who was a white Irish guy, pulled me in the corner and he said, I don't know what is going on, but they do not want you here. You need to get out of this school as soon as as soon as you can. You're the only black teacher here, and I'm telling you, they're trying to destroy you. I said to him, don't worry. He wanted to arrest my students, but I would not do it. Had I arrested the student, I would have never gotten fired because CPS, charged me when I went to a new school. They said I did it. And even though I had a police report to say I didn't, I had students testify I never did any of it. I don't even whip my own children. And I got 3 sons and 4 grandsons. They would never tell you, and a daughter, they never have been whipped, hit, or anything. So that is not my style. But because I'm black female, anything goes. And so the law department, which is, I call it the CPS lie department, they went along with it. And it would, but you know what? It's a blessing. It became a blessing because at that point, I had 3 children in college when I lost my job. And my daughter had just started. And I'm a single parent. So this was my means of income. Now, these were people who most of them had come into the country illegally. And many could not speak English, but they hated my guts. And they went after me like 40 going north. And they had the help of the liberal whites at the law department at CPS. They did not, when you are black, that's who, they are not with you at all. So I ended up leaving there and going into other districts. But this is what I'm telling my story because we just did on our Zoom last week. One of my teachers and you guys should watch the Zoom. It's on my group cause. One of my teachers
Can you tell me what the Zoom is? I can type it while you speak.
Okay, it is Black Teachers Talk. It's a talk about CPS. I think it's Black Educators Speak about CPS. It's on my cause page. And
what's your cause page? How do they get you?
It's Facebook. CAUSC is the group it's in, and it's called Cause. But one of my teachers, if you look at it, he tells of his experience. This is how dirty the game was to get Black veteran teachers out. His name is Walter Blair. He was leaving school. Here it is, a young man who taught from the ages of 23, Black, grew up in the stateway projects, started teaching at 22 years old, and had been in the classroom for over 25 years. Never had all superior ratings. He leaves school one day because one of the things, Mayor Daley took a pension holiday, which meant he didn't pay into the pension for 20 years. So they had to get rid of all the veterans because they didn't want us to get a pension. So he had 20 something years. They don't want you to get the 34 years because they feel that the money is gone. So they targeted the veterans, but mainly the Black veterans. He was leaving one day and one of his students put a box on his desk. He said he didn't look at it because he thought it was a box of staplers. He put it in his desk and he left. The next day, the principal came in and she said, "You have bullets in your desk. Why do you have bullets in your desk?" And he said, "Bullets? Why would I have bullets in my desk? I don't even have a gun." Of course, this is a Black principal. And I don't even have a gun in my desk. And I don't even own a gun. I don't own bullets. They called and they put him in what we call the rubber room, which is an isolated room you go to every day while they investigate you. I was in that room for 3 months while they investigate you and bring you up on some trumped up charges. They pull you out of your classroom. They pay you while you go to this room and sit. He was there for 7 months. And going there 7 months, they couldn't find anything or anybody to say anything bad about him. But at that time, the union under Karen Lewis and his core caucus that's in now had signed away all the teachers' seniority rights, which meant that a principal could fire you basically on the spot. So after 7 months, when they realized, well, we can send him back to the school and let the principal just fire him for something. The principal then moved him from superior to satisfactory and then next to unsatisfactory so she could fire him. Well, he was smart. He decided to resign after they put him through that. And he's been teaching in do a school district outside of Chicago, a suburb, for the last 10 years. And he's a bilingual teacher, speaks fluent Spanish, Black, and this is what he went through. Another
A
friend
Black
of
male
mine.
teacher. And
Mhm.
we need Black male teachers like
Yes,
40 going north.
yes.
And this is what they did to this Black male
This is
teacher.
what they excellent, and you will see him talk. He wrote 2 books. One when he was in the rubber room called "Trust No Man," and then he wrote a new book. He just recently lost his daughter, so he wrote a children's book about how to cope with death after the pandemic. Wonderful young man. And we have teachers that are nationally board certified. Another teacher, Joyce Hutkins, nationally board certified. And these are people with 2 and 3 masters. These are people and PhDs that they're firing. And Joyce had 2 masters and they fired her, brought her. They said that she ate in front of some children. She was at the prison school and they said she was taunting them with the food because she ate. And they brought her up. She's nationally board certified. She won her case. She fought them in court and she wrote a book called How a Pro Se Won Justice. So these are things. Now we're looking at, since the late 90s, our population of Black teachers have dropped from 18,000 to 4 and dropping every day. So that means that our students rarely get to see Black teachers in CPS anymore. When we
That's all
used
over
to,
the country. That's all
yes.
over the country.
And I want you to think about, even in these 5 districts, Detroit is 8,000 out. We have Detroit
8,000
8.
down from what? Do you know what they once were?
8,000. Well, I know that 8,000 are gone from, they've dropped black teachers, 8,000. And now, and this is what happened in New Orleans. Remember New Orleans after Katrina? That, and Arnie Duncan said Katrina was the best thing that ever happened because he wanted to have a like Katrina style situation around the country where he could just wipe out an entire black school district and start from scratch. There isn't a single public school in New Orleans today. They were all destroyed. They're all charters. So let's look at Atlanta. And we have the Atlanta teachers that are in prison for cheating on a test. And these are the
Could you
kind of,
explain that to my audience? I have the article, but I know that it's just so much better when you speak about it than if I
okay,
read and go off the rails. Could you please
okay.
share with my audience what happened in Atlanta? Some may
Yeah,
know, but some may not.
okay. In Atlanta, they had what we call education policy for the Obama administration was race to the top. Remember, I told you race to the top was REN 2010 on steroids, which is basically
What
closing
is,
up black schools, race to the top. So under race to the top, there was a competition that who could get the scores up the highest. And in Atlanta, they won the competition. And it, for me, if you know what you're doing, you, because it's all about the test and the language on the test. And if you really, I was doing 3 and 4 years growth in a year. Once you become a seasoned veteran teacher, that's not unheard of. But whenever you have that kind of growth, everybody looks at you and say, "What did you do? Did you cheat?" Well, no, you're an
no,
experienced
they ask if we
educator.
cheat. They ask if we cheat.
If
That
you
would not
cheat,
have been asked if it was somebody white.
it would
Go
never.
ahead.
And I will, and I'll explain, and then I'll tell you from my own vantage point. In Detroit, oh, I'm sorry, there's so many. Atlanta. In Atlanta, these teachers won, and they won a prize award, which was money. It probably was like a bonus. They won money for the district, and then they won money for this award. Then they said that they had cheated to get these scores. So they brought them up on charges using the RICO law, like gangsters, like they charged Al Capone with organized crime. So they said they were cheating on a test. And because there was some money involved, it was organized crime. That's why they went to jail. Because we all know that if you go to jail for cheating on a test, everybody in America would be in jail. But it was organized crime that they were charged with organized crime because they got this bonus. And in many cases, the bonus may have not even been $1,000. So who would give up a 50, 60, 70, sometimes $80,000 to get $1,000? So because the teachers, who many of them refused to accept that they were guilty, they went to jail. And I believe Trump pardoned some of them. I heard that he pardoned either one or two of them, but before they left, I think before Trump left, he pardoned one or two of them. One of them, I think, got, or maybe a couple got 14 years and in prison. And these were all black educators working in black school districts. And the
How many?
lady,
How many were jailed?
I think about 7 of them were jailed. And the others were ruined. I mean, they can never teach again because their licenses are no good anymore. So one of the things that I wanted to add that they've done in Chicago to get rid of people, they have a policy here. Like in my case, the police came in and they told them that the children were out of order, that I had done nothing, and that the children would be arrested. That they also couldn't call DCFS because DCFS says we don't have anything to investigate. The state of Illinois also said, well, these teachers haven't done anything. They're still licensed. They still have their licenses but CPS, the only entity can just come up. We don't care what you say. We're going to fire them anyway. And we have a teacher that won her case in cause, and she had an arbitration, brought up on charges, won in the court. They told her, you've been out 2 years. We're going to give you $10,000 for 2 years. And she said, no, I can't accept that. They fired her the next day and put her on the do not hire list because she would not take 10,000 and settle. They just said they can do anything they want.
How is this when you should be protected by the union, EEOC? Where is the class action lawsuit?
Right.
Where's NAACP? Where's National Urban League? Where are the marches all throughout the country to push back on this?
Well, they wanted it to happen. Look, even the Black media here in Chicago, that's why we're on. When I went to them and told this story, they don't want to hear it because they're part of the establishment. All these people are part of the establishment. They are the ones whose relatives and them said they're doing this stuff. So they don't want to hear from you when you say this is what happened to me. They don't want to hear it. They look at you and say, too bad. You must have been a bad teacher. You did something wrong. And they will gang up on you. They lie on you. They trash your name. They do everything they can to break you. I have teachers in my cause group. One teacher that I have, she was beat mercilessly by a special ed student and has brain damage. CPS made her wait 9 years to did a settlement, hoping she would die. A lot of our people have died as a result because they didn't have insurance. They had underlying. We have lost about 15 or 20 of our cause members who passed away as a result of this. We've lost a lot of people. Some of our diehard. I will tell you another case. One of the union people that when I started teaching, they said to me, there's a guy called Earl Kelly Prince. If you ever get into trouble, call him. He works at the union. We had one of the best union presidents ever to live, Jackie Vaughn. Earl worked with Jackie for 27 years. He made the mistake of supporting the wrong union people, and they fired him at the union, put him back in the classroom. Well, he's been out the classroom for 27 years, so they gave him the worst class they could think of and fired him. He filed suit against CTU and CPS. Earl fought them in court for 12 years. And about a few years ago, I went to court with him several times. They had him going to the wrong court. He didn't have an attorney. He was represented. They told him, you don't need an attorney. You're almost an attorney. You can represent yourself. And that was the biggest mistake. He was in court for 12 years. And at the end, they told him, sorry, we can't rule on your case. You're in the wrong jurisdiction. And he couldn't sue anybody because Earl ended up having a heart attack right after that and died. And we've lost a lot of really great people as a result of what has happened with the way that people have been mistreated at CPS. So we started organizing to bring some of these people. We are a support group. We just wanted people to get healed. And we just wanted to have something happen to these people. I was in their shoes, so I know what they went through, and I know how difficult it was. So this is why we started Cause, and this is why we're out here telling our story and telling our story to the country if they will hear it, because we're begging teachers, if this happened to you, and this is happening all over the country, we're just ground zero for Chicago because we have the largest population of Blacks in one county in the country. So all the experimental things are done on us. They feel if they can get away with this in Chicago, then they can get away with it in any other Black district. So this is what we have, and you'll see this emergent violence that's going around the country. You do not want to be in the same position that we are in this country. So, in this city rather, or you don't want your district to be like this. But we've
Well,
got.
don't you think? Oh, I'm
Mhm.
sorry. Finish your thought, and I have a question.
Yeah, but I was just wrapping that up. We've got to do something here so that this madness does not spread. We've got to put an end and a stop to it.
But don't you think that their plan to ethnically cleanse, undermine, extinct, make us eat the cost of slavery has manifested through this pandemic?
Yes,
I mean,
I
because
do.
if it was that bad prior to a year ago, I think we're worse off and they're just not reporting it throughout the country. I believe the things that you're experiencing are going to be ushered into these communities sooner than later
Right,
because people are hungry, they're without money, and they're destitute. Don't you
right.
think that this has sped up the very thing you're asking us to try to circumvent? Isn't it already too late?
Well, it probably by plan, the way that it's been planned out, it may seem to be the end if we don't do anything. But we know we've been in this country and there's always been a plan to, and we're still here. So, what we have to do as a race is put our heads together and see how we can get our children back because they're using our kids against us. We've lost our children. I don't think people realize that. And it is so vitally important to get them back. They have been told all kinds of things that we're no good, that we don't care about them, and they're responding. I remember being in the school about 2 years ago with my program, and like you say, sometimes the way that we handle our children, our young people, is so vicious. I mean, we treat them badly. So when they see us, they don't see the love, they don't see the help, they don't see any of that because we don't like poor Black children. And so we don't like their mothers. And those who make their money off of them don't like them. And so that's the kind of there's no love in the game. That's what the children feel. And especially, even in Chicago, they have selective enrollment schools. So they have moved all the Black elite children. 70% of white, 10% of the children that go to CPS are white, but 70% of them go to these special selective enrollment schools that are basically private schools. We pay for your kids' private education. Whitney Young and those schools like Michelle Obama went to, those schools, you cannot get into those schools. So they have a select group of schools for the kids whose parents are CPS employees, who have clout, and their children go to these schools while the neighborhood schools starve. And so any teacher knows, and anybody that's been in a school, you have to have a heterogeneous mix of students. You cannot have all stay 9 5s in a school. You must have stay 9 9s and 8s. If you pull out all the 9s and 8s, children learn by modeling. Where is the peer tutoring going to come in when a child in a neighborhood school sees a Black kid next to him that's a stay 9 9? That they can emulate that behavior. You remember the smart kids in the classroom, and you look up and you want to compete. You want to be like them. We don't have any of those kids in the school. Everybody is they've been dumbed down because they pull all the smart kids out. And if you're smart and connected, with someone down at the city, you can get in, but a really smart child that's poor cannot, because they have a social inventory scale. If you have, I have one of my sons was in the gifted program, and Whitney Young, the school that Michelle Obama went to, he was accepted into every selective enrollment school. But when they interviewed him for that school, they asked him some questions. I was recently separated, and they want to see if this kid can be molded kind of like into a black supremacist. My son, even though at ninth grade, he's 18 point something in reading and 17 in math. He's in the gifted program. He could not get in because the social inventory that they had said no, something's wrong with him. His dad's not in the home. So really poor children who are brilliant cannot go to those schools unless they're connected. And of course, they have a few little slots, they let a few come in, but it's not competitive. So our neighborhood schools that's why everything is just festering, because we don't have the stability, we don't have the academic excellence in the neighborhood schools. So we try to bring resources to the neighborhood school, to like things that I was doing with the scholarship, like writing grants and infusing our neighborhood schools with additional resources so that our kids can have a way to achieve excellence. So that's what happens. And if we don't go back, here are the things that are going to save us. And I want everybody to think about this. We must go back to the drawing board. We have to have a three-tiered approach. We have to get to our children before they're 8 years old. There needs to be a academic academy in every Black school district at the 3rd through 5th grade level. We lose our children at the 3rd grade. That's why they build prisons based on 3rd grade scores. If a student, if a child is not on level by the 3rd grade, it's going to be very difficult for them to meet a teacher with the skill level to get them over. So we must bolster it up, because our children are not like they were 20 years ago. When they are in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, 2nd grade, they are learning the system. By the time they're in 3rd grade, they know it. So if you're not giving them something different, if you don't have a different kind of curriculum, if you don't have, you lose them, because they've already done that. They're on the internet. They've got all this. So if we're not going to bolster up a 3rd through 5th grade academy, so when they get to middle school, they can take off and fly. If we're not doing that, that's a long range goal. We have got to get our children back. We have got to get education on a level where all children can succeed. I've taken some of the most difficult school districts, and I wanted to see. When I was in my school, every year I had the highest gain for reading and math. And my gains were so high that they would come up programs and say, "What are you doing?" And I wasn't doing anything they said, because I knew what they said did not work. But I just went along with it. I was teaching a different way. When I left my school, I became the lead coach, and I took a school in the poorest neighborhood. And the highest score we had was a state 9.7. And this is why this is important in math. I was the math science lead teacher. At the following year, we had 29 nines, 29 eights, and 57 sevens. And the rest were pulled up like 5s and 6s, which is average. Now, those were the top scores. When I went to look for work, because I was at a probationary school and I got the school off probation, so they didn't need us anymore. So we lost our job. When I started looking for another job, this is where my troubles all began. I started looking for another job. They told me, a principal, "I know those rugrats over there at that school did not achieve scores like that. You must have cheated. Yes, they did. They did say that. A principal, a black principal. And it was as if they didn't care. No matter, the children loved me, but they didn't care. They didn't care that I was successful with the kids because they didn't value them. They didn't care about them. And so we have to, like Michael Jackson said, it's time for the black community to take a mirror. And the black elite, the top 10% who make their money off of poor black people and just abuse them and mistreat them and have no value for them. This is something we've got to address. We have to address the fight within our community before we can even attempt to address the system of white supremacy and all the things that are going on with that system. We're not even able, and I tell them, our kids don't get to learn about racism because we've got our foot on their necks so badly that they cannot get out of the community to even learn about what happens in the system. They're here with black people crushing them before they can get out of the system, before they can go on and learn. They failed everybody 1,000 times over, and the children have given up. And so we as black educators, we cannot continue to do harm to our teachers and our students and disrespect our parents, because this is why we're losing. There was a school across the street from me, and I would go in and talk when I worked for the union. And I would tell the principal, I said, you keep writing these black teachers up, but you know, they're the only reason why you're here. You need to try to work with them. So she told me, she said, I need to work with them. They're not doing this and that. I said, but when they get rid of all of them, they're gonna fire you too. She fired almost every black teacher in there and hired a group of others. Well, of course, and this, I've seen this happen over and over. Then her teachers, her new teachers, got together and worked her up and got her fired. Because I keep telling them, you are trying to get rid of the people who are the reason why you're here and bring in other people that do not want you to be their boss. They don't want you to be their boss. It's something that we don't get. The self-hate won't allow us to see the truth. It's a veil that we have over us. The hatred is so deep that we would rather fail ourselves. The joy of hurting another black person is what we're dealing with. I mean, we are actually at that point, too many of us. And to say, when we look out, there's a reason why these things don't happen in a vacuum. You're looking at a 12 or 13-year-old. That's a child that's been alive 13 years. What has he learned in 13 years? He's learned violence. He's learned hatred. That's why he's raging in the street. I mean, children are just not born with hate. They learn it. You're modeling the behavior, the black on black hatred. When you walk up into a school and you fire every black person in there and you tell these young people that these people are no good, someone else is better, that's promulgating the black on black hatred. And I tell people in Chicago, the black on black hatred is supreme. And that is why we're in the shape that we're in now. There's absolutely no love in the game. And you can see it with the way that we act toward each other and the way that we treat each other. And we don't want to deal with it. We would rather sit around and trash poor people and say that they're nothing and then not give the support, take the money. Because if you look at it, most of these people, they have a job because of poor black people. They don't need you if you're black, and they don't need you unless you're doing something. You have to have that relationship with poor blacks in order to have what you have, even if you're a politician, if you're an educator, no matter what you do. So this is one of the problems that we're having in Chicago. And I'm not sure if the other Brian, but Brian is in California, and we have people from all over the country in our cause group. And so we're just looking, and so that's what's going on. And Brian did say that his browser wouldn't support coming on, so maybe we can do it another time with him. But so this is just the education crisis that we're in, and I focus on the schools because that is where it all begins, at the home and at the school. And if the home, see, years ago, like when I was working, if the home was failing, you could go to the school and get the support. Now you can't do that. So where do the children get the support? You can't get it in the school. You can't get it because the people that were giving you the kind of support you needed are not there anymore. And so where does a Black child go? Where does a Black boy go when they need to learn how to be a Black man and they haven't seen a Black man at home? And the handful of Black men that are in the system have been fired. And I'm talking about family men. If you're gay and you're a Black man, you're okay. You can stay. But if you're Black and you have a family and that you're homosexual, that's taboo here. That is not what they want. Those people in position of power do not want a Black man. They don't want the Black female either because our ideology is different. What they're promoting, most of our cause people, they're not promoting that. Their ideology is different. They're looking to create a child that has respect and love for their people. The Black teachers, they want them to have an Afrocentric experience, and that is taboo. That is taboo in our schools, that they just don't want that. And so you're of no value, especially if you're a Christian. They definitely don't want you in the schools. So they don't want, even if you're not talking about Christianity, they just don't want your presence there. So these are things that, and you kind of look when you think about all the Christian Black teachers that are working in the schools, they go to church, but their bosses are all antichrist, and they go along with that mentality in order. And I just don't get it. If you're going along with people who have told you that they're against everything you believe in, then how do you justify that? How do you justify that? So I just don't know. That baffles me, that you can't see what is actually going on. So we have this crisis in our
It's a
community.
big crisis. I want to ask you, because you told us first that we need academies for our
Right.
K through 3 so that we can captivate their young minds to set them up
Mhm.
for success. With what
Yeah,
money, may I ask you? How do we start academies in these distressed communities when we're
exactly.
strapped for resources? We're the highest unemployed, the highest underemployed, and being replaced in every
Mhm.
industry with Black immigrants, and white folks alike.
Yeah.
How do
You have
we,
to
as the
insist on.
American descendants of chattel slavery,
Mhm.
turn this Titanic around when we understand that education is the key to our children's own ability to pull themselves up by
Right.
their bootless straps?
Right.
With what resources can we go into our communities and do this? And it seems to
Well,
me like these kids need therapy before anyone like me can even feel safe enough to go in there. Well, let me tell a story.
Well, well, well.
Let me tell a story. Don't lose your thought. I was a substitute teacher, teaching, not a sub, I'm sorry. I was a part of a creative arts program in the Brooklyn school system. And I'm here to tell you the trauma of these children. I spent more time managing trauma than I could teaching the kids. It was exhausting. And the teachers had all but given up. I mean, when I would go into the classroom, they gave me the most troubled kids to try and teach creative arts to. The kids who don't give a damn. The kids from the high-rise inner projects, the Marcy projects and things of this nature. And they would give me these kids and tell me to try to manage it. I'm here to tell you the teachers would be sitting up with their feet propped up on the desk and reading their newspapers. The teachers had checked out. And so here we're coming in with this arts program to teach them theater arts in order to give them some aptitude around language, some aptitude around presentation in a very fun way. And we were left to our own devices. And I'm telling you, it swore me off the teaching. So with what has been created, how in the world are we supposed to feel safe going into these communities to build academies for K through 3 and stay there and teach children who are challenged in this way, who have been traumatized in this way?
Well, the academies are for 3 through 5 because usually K through 3, you can, or K through second grade. I mean, most people can handle them. It has to be in the beginning. 3 through 5 is when we lose them. So it can't be education like it was before. We also need to have induction programs where we recruit and train teachers from the community. We have it in our high schools now because these are young people who understand the culture and understand the language and can readily deal with them. But I don't know what it is, but when I worked and there's a difference when I was teaching for CPS as opposed to when I was just in a school. So when I'm running programs in my school, the students don't respond to me the same way, I guess, because they don't see me as a quote teacher. They see me as an administrator or something else. I felt the same way when I saw, because I worked in a very difficult high school, and I was actually kind of scared. When I went in, I didn't know what was going to happen because I have taught middle school, but I was pleasantly surprised, and it really taught me a lot that our kids really just need someone that they feel that they cares about them. And from that, because I would come into the lunchroom and the whole school, and they would just run over and take my bags and try to help me get up the stairs. And they were just so nice. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, I was scared of my own kids because they proved me wrong. And I was pleasantly surprised. And that's why I was able to take them all over the country. We went to Washington, we went to Howard, we went to Atlanta, and places where nobody else would take them in our program. That's why I was saying I was so excited. We were going to go to North Carolina and take them. And these were kids I took kids with problems, but I will tell you once again, the Black elite that owned that we actually wrote this grant and we put it in a non-for-profit. I'm not going to say their name, but they were elitists. The person who had the non-for-profit before was a good friend of mine, very ex-Black Panther brother, very powerful brother, and he passed away in a car accident. And we were so distressed that my sister wrote a grant, and we said we wanted to infuse his non-for-profit. So we wrote this grant, and we wanted to do it the way he would do it. But they took the money, and during the pandemic, the new people came in and they got rid of all of my students and they fired all the staff. And that's when I just went ahead. I said, I'll never do that again. If we get another grant, we will put it in my own non for profit. But one of the things that I learned from that, and I'm so thankful that I had that experience because it was so positive. And if someone had told me, you're going to go to high school and you're going to go to one of the roughest high schools in the city and you're going to have this great experience, I wouldn't have believed it. So I would have said, oh, no, but one of the things I learned about that was how to deal with the children, the young people, and they respond. They're young people. If they see that you like them, they just it's like they give back. They could sense something, and I had this big wall that I put up. Everywhere we went, I would take pictures. And it was just from one end of the hallway to the next. I kept adding to it. And they would come to my classroom. It spanned like 12 feet. And it was just nothing wall. I call it the wall of respect. And it just had nothing but pictures and all these wonderful pictures of them going to all these different places, to Atlanta, staying in these wonderful hotels. And all the students would come up and look at these pictures and they wanted to be a part of it. And they respected you. So I know we can reach our kids, but we've just got to have the right people. It's got to be about that black on black love that we just give to them. And like I spend my time now, like you saw, I gave a scholarship to one of the students that was in my program. I gave gift bags. I'm sitting here looking at some of them. I'm going to hold them up. I just buy them and fill them full of great things for them. And we've got to infuse our community with love for these children, and it will come back to us. One of my students was on that I taught in third grade on the portal. And here she reached out to me because she would see me on Facebook and she would see me posting. And one day she said, Miss Chatondra, I need your help. My cousin is missing and nobody can find her. Can you please post something? And I said, okay. Well, what is your cousin's name? And this was before anyone knew her. She said, Sandra Bland. That was her cousin. And she began looking for her before anybody knew Sandra. I was posting and I said, well, let me see if I can help you find your cousin. Later, we found out it was Sandra Bland. And I taught her in third grade, and she asked me to do a podcast with her because she said that class, because it's the one time, that's why I know it was the one time I taught third grade. And they asked me to come down and teach the third grade because I had gotten the scores up. I was doing 3 and 4 years growth. And let me tell you, wow, our students don't understand English. Black kids don't speak English. And they definitely don't speak the standardized English that's on the test. And even though we've taught them well, when they take the test, they do not understand what they're being asked to do. That's why they don't do well on it. So I understood that as a young teacher, and I would sit to them and I would read the question and I said, this is what they mean. And they would say, really? And I said, what does it mean? Those kids didn't have a clue as about what they were being asked to do because they don't speak standard English. That's how I got the scores up. I would just sit and explain, and I would say things to them. The question would be, what do you think about so and so? A higher order question. And I would say, don't tell them what you think. Then I asked them, you tell them what you think, you'll be in trouble. I said, tell them what they think. I said, you've watched TV, you know how, because we're floating in 2 different cultures. So if I tell you what I think in it's not going to match up to the system of white supremacy. They're going to say that's wrong. So you watch TV. How do they solve these problems? That's how I had to teach them. How do you, when you're looking at this question, this is what it means. Those kids are looking to that language and it's Greek to them. And you said, but I taught you this, but they don't understand the language. This is one other thing we have to do. We have to get ESL classes like the Hispanics have to give additional language support to our children, and you will see them rise. It will happen instantaneously. And people would come and say, what are you doing in there? How are you able to get? And when I would tell them, that's what you have to do, they wouldn't believe it. But the scores just rise instantly. Because, and that's what in Atlanta, that's why I felt badly for the Atlanta teachers, because I know I could have been in that position because I was doing 3 and 4 years growth in a year. And people were asking how. One year I had almost all this class and it was almost all boys. And I would just be sweating. Oh God, they gotta do. Oh, what are they gonna do? You guys listening to me. Stop playing. Listen. We took the test. The scores were so high. And I looked at them. I said, why did you guys do me like this? And they said, what? I said, you were listening. All this time you were listening, and I'm up here sweating bullets thinking you're not listening. And they were getting 2 and 3 years growth. And I was like, you guys are wrong. You know you did me wrong. Yes, they said, Mr. Tonda, my scores were high too. So as we begin, there is a way to reach the most difficult child. I want to tell you the story of a student that I just had 2 years ago. He was a little gangbanger. He wasn't well kept at all. He would come up to my classroom with the other students who were in my program. And he wanted to join. And I didn't have a space for him, but he really wasn't like college material. One day I didn't see him for about 2 weeks. And I asked the students, I said, where is the M boy? I won't say his name. I said, where is he? And I said, why doesn't he come up anymore? And they said, well, Miss Jatanda, his mother died and he doesn't come to school anymore. So I said, look, would you go get him and bring him when you go home? Tell him I need to see him. So he comes up to the classroom. And I mean, when I saw him, I almost started crying because he was so broken. And I sat him down and I said, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. I said, your mom is still with you. She's just in a different form and she speaks to you through other people and it's going to be okay. And he didn't have a mother or a father. And I said, look, I'm going to enroll you in this program. And you got to be good. You got to do your work. You got to stay on point. But I have a slot for you. Shortly after that, we went to Atlanta. And I could see him start transforming. He wore a nice shirt and a tie. He was so well behaved. He stood up at the meeting and he told the other students, he said, they don't have to do this for us. They don't have to spend this money for us. And I just want to thank you. So right before the pandemic, I had 2 students in my class as they were shutting the school down. And I told them one was a student who had gotten pregnant that year, and she was a senior, and one was this kid. And he came up and I said, I've been working very hard with the both of them. And he came up and he said, I said, well, it looks like you made it. You look like you're going to graduate, both of you. And I said, we don't know what's going to happen with the pandemic, but, I think you're going to graduate. And he said, thank you, Miss Chatondra. When you enrolled me in this program, you saved my life. He said, I had decided to go to the street and join the gang I was with and give up on everything because my mother had died. He said, but when you enrolled me here, you saved my life. And my other student, she was pregnant and she was having her baby in like April. And I'm like, I told her, I said, we made it because they want to kick her out the school. And I said, you can't go anyplace else because no one will know you. So what I'm saying is I have a student who was in a gang, and I have another student who was in a gang, and I saw him in the store, and I said, because of the pandemic, I said, did you graduate? And he said, yes, I did. And he said, I said, did you enroll in college? And he said, yes. And I said, no, you didn't. And he said, yes, I did. And he flipped out his college, and he was at Northern Illinois University. He had been shot before, and he had gone on two of our tours. He went to us to Atlanta and to Washington, and he was limping in Atlanta because he had been shot in the leg, and he had been in a gang. And I did check on him. So these are kids whose lives, my student she had her baby, and she's going back to school next year, but she ended up graduating. All of these kids graduated. These were kids that weren't supposed to make it. So right now, if we begin to give them that structure, if we begin, and I ask, if you're a retired teacher, do not go to the casino and spend your money. Come to the schools and help our children. Please volunteer. You talked about how can we do this. We need a volunteer group of veteran Black teachers to come back, come back. And that's what cause is. Come back and help us. Come back and let's build that 3rd through 5th grade academy. Let's volunteer in every state. We should have one in every state. We should have more than one. If we, in every school district, we should build that 3rd through 5th grade academy, even if we have to volunteer to do it. Because what is a teacher doing? I don't mind working. I have worked for free now if it's going to save our community. So those are things we can do. And we will get the funding. We will get the funding if we go ahead and begin to do this on our own. We can demand that funding, but we have got to try to save ourselves and save our people. And we've got to get out of this elitist mindset, that Black on Black hatred that's holding us. It's holding us back from achieving our goals. And so when we think about solutions, those are just some. The teacher induction program. If you go to my website, www.teachforthefuture with the number 4, you will see, as you go to some of the things that we do, you will see my students, you will see the ones that we've been working with, and look at them and see the joy on their faces and see how their lives are being transformed one child at a time. And there is federal money available. So let's write for the grants.
Your website is teach the number 4 thefuture.com, right?
.org, I'm sorry. .org.
Oh, hold on.
And then you
Hold
will
on
see
1 second. Teach for the future.org. Okay. And then how do they give to your nonprofit? We like to give to grassroots. We don't like to give to things that can be co-opted. Or where is the best place for my audience to give to help these amazing children? I mean, you got me ready to run out here and be a teacher the way you
Oh,
lovingly.
please do. Please
Yeah,
do.
well,
Even if you can just sob, we just need all hands on deck. I'm
yes, we
trying to
do.
do our GoFundMe.
Yeah, what is it
It's,
go? Are you able to share it in the chat? Can you
yeah,
chat?
yes, I'm looking for the link now.
Okay. And then we're going to pray everyone out. We're like at 7:37. We're going to have you back. You don't have to tell it all in this one.
Yeah.
We will have you
Okay.
back. And I'm so glad. I want you guys to get to this website for those of you who have an inclination, especially our Black men, our
Oh, yeah.
educated Black men. We need you. to be like surrogate fathers as you teach our young people in these very distressed communities. These are our people that we are fighting for reparations. And
Yes.
if they're not healed and whole and have education, they won't even know what to do with $1 million. Okay. So we need to reach them now to get them in position so that they can pass that generational inheritable wealth down to their legacy. And we
Right.
can turn this Titanic around. But like Brian said earlier, all we have is each other. All we got is
Right.
each other. So we need to find a way to put, I myself must admit, as challenging as it was in Brooklyn, when I stuck and stayed and I did what I had to do to be a surrogate mom to these children,
Uh-huh.
they produced. And that
Oh
show we
yeah.
put on was extraordinary. Just like Rosita said, I didn't think they were listening. But in the end, the production we put on, I ain't been back. Okay. Because it was a lot. And not everybody is cut for this. But if you have an inclination to teach, this could be a way. And so I need you to reach out
And I
to.
did put my link. I put
I
my
don't know
link.
why I don't see. Oh, you sent it. You private chat me. Okay. I'm going to
Okay.
copy and paste
Okay.
into the regular chat for those of you who, hold on. I'm coming back over to the comments. For those of you who would like to give and give some more so that Miss Rosita can give more scholarships and can
Mhm.
really expound on her ideals. She's very credible, as you've heard here tonight. And these are the grassroots that we need to find in our communities to help them do the heavy lifting. If you're not going to teach, give money.
Right.
Okay? And so
And
there's
we've
her.
got to love our people out of this mess they're in. We really
You're
do.
right.
Hmm.
Because love
And
changes
it's
it
a
all.
wonderful feeling. It when you see it, instead of saying the young parents, because I've done for the parents, they will come on. I just give. I mean, anything I have, as long as it's going to change, I don't mind. Like we looked at our little scholarship, I gave all the money to the student. This is not about me. We're trying to change lives one at a time. And if you give me $1 million, then I'll change 1 million lives. So it's not about me. I have what I need. God has provided. I'm not rich, but I'm comfortable and I haven't missed a meal, as you can see. Yes.
Amen. Well, I do want you guys to give and understand that it's going to take us to continue pulling ourselves up by our bootless straps. This
Yes.
is what we can do in the meantime and in between time. And there's no gift too large or too small. Understand that aggregated dollars is how we get this done for our communities. These are our children. And none of us are free until all of us are free. We have got to pull away from being like our white oppressors. We
Yes.
have learned some terrible, dreadful habits from them. We have got to get them out of office. We have got to weaponize our vote. And I've already shared with you guys a trifecta of either party gets us George Floyd and so on and so forth. These are designs of institutional systemic racism happening to our people. We are being ethnically cleansed up out of our own country that our ancestors built with their lives. Understand there's a big agenda. And just because you don't see somebody falling to your left or to your right because you've got privilege doesn't mean the agenda is not being executed and not being manifested while our eyes are wide shut in some instances. Okay. So you need to understand. I bring on guests like Miss Rosita to help us see what's happening in places like Chirac. So there's
Right.
a Chirac happening all over the country with Adocs.
Hmm.
And you've got immigrants who profess to be white. You've got black white supremacists, and you've got white liberal supremacists. And you've got everybody with an agenda to exterminate and to extinct us. And if we don't get all hands on deck and we don't become politically educated, we are going to be participating in the demise and the peril of our own people, our own lineage. We will be as extinct as the Indians, pushed off to a reservation where somebody will be controlling it and we'll be waiting for crumbs from the floor. Exactly. That's where we are right now. The current pandemic is continuing to undo the rest of us, losing homes, being evicted from apartments, being evicted from extended stays. Our lives are becoming more and more unstable because we are the anchor of this country's 3Ks, capitalism 3Ks. And that's on both sides of the aisle, the Democrats and the Republicans alike. And that's why I'm saying deliver a red top and a blue Congress and shut it down. Because we only have our vote to weaponize. And we keep voting blue no matter who to our own people's peril. They're all complicit. This is the Boule, the intelligentsia of Black thought, doing all these things to undermine us, trying to co-opt our reparationist movement, trying to tell us what that should look like. And we need to slow this down. And the only way to do it is to mix ideologies, because we may have one last election cycle to do it. You already see, and I'll do the show tomorrow, that Biden's favorability has gone up 8 points with the Republicans, and it's going down with the Democrats. Okay? Because he's doing none of those Bernie Sanders class-based policies, which we already know does not fix race. And we are usually the tiebreaker. 87% of our electorate voted Biden-Harris. And they've done nothing to include us economically, nor to give us social justice. Nothing. They've signed executive orders for everyone but Adocs. And so when you are a wealthless group, your vote is all you've got. And third parties will never win in this country. The Democrats and the Republicans got this thing on lock. They've got all the money that they killed and stole from us, from our ancestors' heinous chattel slave labor. And when you've got all the money, you've got all the power, and you are complicit. They're working together to keep the boot of oppression on our necks, literally and figuratively. Yeah. And so you've got to weaponize the only commodity you've got, your vote, until we can replace the lanes with full-chested cash reparationists. Understand that that's ours to do, and we need to make videos like this go viral to get this message out. What I'm imploring upon you to do is no different than Dr. Charles Morris of Abyssinian Church. He was the pastor. And we delivered Teddy Roosevelt the White House. He dishonorably discharged 167 Buffalo soldiers who were wrongfully accused of murdering a second white man after being quarantined to their barracks for being wrongfully accused of murdering the first. Dr. Charles Morris said, "You shot us when our guns were empty. And for that, we're going to return the same by delivering a blue top of the ticket and a red Congress to protect the Black South." That is when we were Republicans. We're now Democrats by and large. I'm independent. But as Democrats, we need to send a searing strong message to the powers that be that we want to control our communities. We want our communities back. We want to control what our reparations looks like. We don't
Right.
need the niggerati telling us what that should look like. Okay? That is up to the grassroots to make those decisions. So it's up to the grassroots to send a message. You don't get the top of the ticket until you give us cash reparations in the trillions over multi-generations.
Mm-hmm.
And Miss Rosita, I'll let you close us out before I pray us out. Go ahead. Your closing words.
Well, I would just like to say to all those people, not only educators, our entire education community, students, parents, and teachers, we have got to pull together and get our children back. At this point, we're losing them, and we don't have ownership over the children that we brought into the world. Their minds, they're being indoctrinated in a way that will not serve us in the future. So if we don't do this, we can expect more violence, and we can even expect extinction and genocide as a result.
Thank you so much for being my guest. Hold the frame while I pray us out. That the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever
Amen.
Adocs and its allies are, God truly is, because family, you are the face of God. You are the voice of God. You are the body temple of the Spirit of the living God. And with that said, family, I want you to make it a beautiful, God-inspired rest of your evening. I may be back tomorrow. I have an advocacy thing I'm trying to do to bring reparations rally annually on Juneteenth to every city, major city throughout the country. So I'm supposed to be on that meeting. So if you don't see me tomorrow, you'll see me Thursday. Same time, same bat station, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, the reparationist perspective with more of As the World of Adocs Turns. I love you, Black family. I love you strong. Peace. Hold
Peace.
the frame, Miss Rosita. Stand by.